National Association of Realtors strongly encourages Congress to enact a comprehensive natural disaster policy to mitigate exposure to the risks of natural disaster and foster the availability and affordability of property insurance for homeowners and commercial property owners. Thank you again for this invitation to present the views of NAR on H.R. 1682. We stand ready to enact meaningful reforms and help you to enact meaningful reforms to the National Flood Insurance.
I'd like to thank you for your testimony, and I'd like to begin the question period with several issues that I did not hear you discuss. Did you read the bill?
I did.
So you know what we're attempting to do in all aspects of the bill?
I do.
You did not reference much of what the bill is intended to do. Let me just kind of gear in on what do you think about that portion of the bill that increases fines on lenders who do not enforce the mandatory flood insurance policy requirements for those living in a floodplain who hold a federally backed mortgage?
Well, we support that proposal to the extent that we do get tougher compliance for mandatory purchase, and that's going to ensure that property owners that should have flood insurance who have federally backed mortgages will have it. Therefore, the flood insurance policies will increase, and that lends itself into strengthening the financial status of the program.
Just walk me through one last point. If people down south are having huge flooding, how is that impacting people up north who may not be?
How are they affecting people up north?
Right. Do the rates up north go up as well?
No.
Okay.
No. This is the rates for the National Flood Insurance Program are universal rates. So in other words, it's not like in the normal insurance industry where
they do. In other words, if you're trying to capture more down south, everybody up north is having to pay for it.
Yes.
Correct?
Is it your contractor you've had for years? Is this a competitive bid?
Yes.
And they win every time?
For the last few years, yes.
How many years?
I'd have to check on how many years.
Okay. I'm going to call on the gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Taylor, and I would hope, Mr. Taylor, in your line of questioning, the problem or the concerns about the private insurance companies. You've talked to me a lot about that. You might want to, if you have time.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Connor, I'm very much interested in subpoenaing the records of a conversation held between Mr. Marstead and, according to the Times-Picayune New Orleans paper today, 300 insurance company representatives, insurance agents, and Gulf Coast insurance commissioners on September 7th of 2005, at which point he, in speaking to these people, mentioned that he had already had conference calls with the largest insurance companies in the flooded areas. The reason I would like that, Madam Chairman, is because I think if we go back to testimony of about a month ago when Mr. Marstead came before this committee, he said something to the effect, well, I told them if there was wind and water, go ahead and pay the flood, which leads to a problem with the United States Federal Code, because under the National Write Your Own policy, and I'm going to quote here, the primary relationship between the Write Your Own company, private industry, and the federal government will be one of fiduciary nature, i.e., to assure that any taxpayer funds are accounted for and appropriately expended. And the quote is, the entire responsibility for providing a proper adjustment for both combined wind and water claims and flood-alone claims is the responsibility of the Write Your Own company. That's out of the U.S. Code 44 CFR 62.23. What's interesting is that on September 13th, apparently based on this conversation with Mr. Marstead, State Farm Insurance Company sent out, and I'm quoting, where wind acts concurrently with flooding to cause damage to the insured property, coverage for the loss exists only under the flood coverage. So here we have the United States Code calling for a proper adjustment of the claim. We're letting State Farm say, go out and, if this much was wind, they pay that much. If this much is water, you pay that much over here. But State Farm, apparently based on a conversation with Mr. Marstead, turns around and says, if there's wind and water, stick it all to the taxpayer. So I understand you gentlemen's concerns, but I'd also remind you, in my case, I've been a resident of that home for 28 years, never a drop of water. Within 200 yards of me was a 200-year-old brick mansion. Been there for 200 years. The day after Katrina, it's a pile of bricks. Third thing I would like the gentleman to comment on is I'm having trouble believing that you've done a proper following up of adjudicating these claims, and I'm particularly troubled by one report that says that your agency really only has about 40 employees, that you've actually turned around to an outfit called Computer Science Corporation and hired about 170 of them on a contract basis. And so you are in effect hiring contractors to see if the contractors that you have hired to adjudicate the claim have been fair with you. And I don't think, again, going back to these gentlemen's concerns that the taxpayers are being built, that you guys are doing that very well, the oversight on behalf of the taxpayer, where it's just wind damage. And so I do share the gentleman's concern. Number one, because I believe in the flood insurance program. I know how important it is. But if it's not properly run, then you do play into the hands of those people who would like to do away with it. I recognize that 52% of all Americans live in coastal America. That 52% of all Americans, whether it's Connecticut, New Jersey, Mississippi, California, are at risk of some type of ocean or rain or flood event. That I got here and helped pay for the Iowa floods and didn't bat an eye when it came to that bailout. And so that we do help all members of this country, but your important program is in jeopardy if it's not properly managed. So I would like the gentleman.
Without objection, the articles will be
Madam Chairman?
yes.
Again, I appreciate your generosity. I would request that the committee subpoena the records of that meeting between Director Marstead and the insurance industry that occurred on September the 7th of 2005, and any additional phone calls that occurred between the director and the heads of